Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions.
What is going on? I haven't done anything.
I haven't done anything wrong. You need a proper reason to enter my property.
The afternoon sun cast long, gentle shadows across the meticulously tended rows of vegetables in Esther Mae Johnson's garden. At 72 years young, Esther Mae possessed a spirit as vibrant as the blooming petunias lining her walkway. Her hands, gnarled with age but still nimble, carefully pruned a tomato plant, a familiar rhythm in her peaceful routine. Neighbors often remarked that Esther Mae's garden was a reflection of her soul, orderly, beautiful, and radiating a quiet strength. For over 40 years, this modest house on Sycamore Street had been her sanctuary, filled with the echoes of laughter from her late husband, Thomas, and the warm memories of raising her son, Marcus. The tranquility of the afternoon was shattered by the rumble of a police cruiser pulling up to the curb. Two officers emerged, their uniforms crisp but their demeanor carrying an air of unwarranted authority. Officer Kevin Miller, barely out of his 20s, puffed out his chest, his gaze sweeping over Esther Mae's unassuming property with a hint of disdain. Beside him, Officer Brian Thompson, a decade older with weary eyes, seemed less enthusiastic about whatever call had brought them to this quiet street. "Mum," Miller called out, his voice sharp. "We've had a report of a disturbance in the area. Some loud music." Esther Mae straightened up, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. Her hearing wasn't what it used to be, but she was certain she hadn't been playing any music, let alone loudly. "Good afternoon, officers," she replied, her voice calm and slightly raspy. "I haven't had any music on today. Just enjoying the peace and quiet in my garden." Miller's eyes narrowed. "We got a specific address, 14 Sycamore. That's right here." He gestured dismissively towards her house. "Yes, sir. This is 14 Sycamore." Esther Mae confirmed patiently, "But I assure you, there's been no loud music coming from my home." Thompson finally spoke, his tone slightly softer than his partner's. "Perhaps it was another house on the street, Kevin." Miller ignored him. He approached Esther Mae, his posture confrontational. "Are you sure about that?" "Ma'am, maybe you're just not hearing it." He smirked, a subtle hint of mockery in his voice. Esther Mae felt a flicker of irritation. She might be older, but she wasn't deaf. "I'm quite sure, officer. I've been out here for the past couple of hours, and it's been nothing but bird song." "Well, someone called it in," Miller insisted, his voice rising slightly. "Maybe you had it on earlier. Or maybe someone else is in the house?" He started to move towards the porch, as if he intended to enter without permission. "Hold on now," Esther Mae said firmly, stepping in front of him. "You can't just come onto my property like that. If there was a mistake and the music came from somewhere else, then you should check there." Miller stopped, his face hardening. "Are you obstructing a police investigation, ma'am?" he asked, his tone laced with threat. "No, sir. I'm simply stating that I haven't done anything wrong," Esther Mae replied, her voice still steady despite the growing unease in her stomach. "I'm happy to cooperate, but I won't have you barging into my home without a good reason." The initial polite inquiry had devolved into an unnecessary confrontation, fueled by Miller's arrogance and his apparent predisposition to view Esther Mae with suspicion. The sunny afternoon suddenly felt heavy with unspoken tension. The air crackled with Miller's escalating frustration. "Look, lady, we have a call to investigate. Just let us take a look around, and if everything's fine, we'll be on our way." He reached out, his hand brushing against Esther Mae's arm. Esther Mae flinched, instinctively pulling back. "I said no. You need a warrant or real reason to come onto my property." Miller's face flushed with anger. "That's it. You're being uncooperative." He grabbed her arm more firmly this time, his grip surprisingly strong. "Let go of me," Esther Mae exclaimed, fear finally creeping into her voice. She tried to pull away, but Miller held tight. Thompson watched the scene unfold, his expression troubled but offering no intervention. "You're resisting arrest," Miller declared, his voice triumphant, as if he had finally found justification for his aggressive behavior. He twisted Esther Mae's arm behind her back, ignoring her cries of pain. "I'm not resisting. I just want you off my property," she gasped, the years melting away to reveal the fierce protectiveness of a mother defending her home. But Miller was beyond reason. He shoved Esther Mae against the side of her house, the impact knocking the wind out of her. Before she could regain her balance, he roughly pushed her towards the ground. Her knees hit the concrete with a sickening thud, and a sharp pain shot through her hip. "Get up," Miller barked, but Esther Mae was struggling to breathe, the pain overwhelming. I can't," she choked out, tears welling up in her eyes. Instead of offering help, Miller's face contorted with rage. He drew his baton and, with a sickening thwack, struck Esther May across the back. A wave of agonizing pain washed over her, and she cried out. Thompson finally seemed to stir, a look of horror creeping onto his face. "Kevin, that's enough," he muttered, but Miller ignored him. His face flushed with an almost manic intensity. He struck Esther May again, this time on her leg. The pain was blinding. Esther May lay on the ground, helpless and terrified. As Miller continued his brutal assault, she could hear Thompson's weak protest, but they were drowned out by the sound of the baton and her own muffled sobs. Finally, Miller seemed to run out of steam. He stood over her, breathing heavily, his uniform slightly disheveled. "Next time, you'll learn to cooperate," he spat. His eyes filled with a chilling lack of remorse. He and Thompson turned and walked back to their cruiser, leaving Esther May lying on the ground, bruised, battered, and her spirit momentarily broken. They drove away without a word, the sound of their tires on the asphalt a cruel punctuation mark on the horrific event. The searing pain in her back and leg was almost unbearable, but an even deeper ache resonated in Esther May's chest. The violation of her safe haven, the indignity of being treated with such brutality. With a Herculean effort, she pushed herself up, her body screaming in protest. Every movement was agony, but the thought of remaining helpless on the ground fueled her determination. Slowly, painstakingly, she made her way back into the house, leaning heavily on the furniture for support. Once inside, she sank onto her worn armchair, tears streaming down her face. The physical pain was immense, but the emotional wounds cut deeper. How could this have happened? Why? After a few moments of allowing herself to succumb to the pain and shock, a steely resolve began to form within her. She was hurt, but she was not defeated. She would not let this stand. With trembling hands, she reached for the old, reliable landline phone on the side table. It was a relic from a simpler time, but it had always been there for her. A lifeline to the people she loved. She dialed the number etched in her memory, a number that connected her to a world far removed from the quiet streets of her neighborhood. The phone rang a few times before a deep, familiar voice answered. "Mama, is everything all right?" It was Marcus, his concern evident even through the phone line. Esther May took a shaky breath, trying to keep her voice steady. "Marcus, baby, something happened here." She tried to downplay it at first, not wanting to worry her son, who was stationed overseas. "There were some officers. They came by." "Officers? What happened, Mama? Are you okay?" Marcus's voice was now sharp with alarm. The dam finally broke. The tears flowed freely as Esther May recounted the horrifying encounter, her voice trembling as she described Miller's aggression and the brutal beating she had endured. She spoke of the pain, the humiliation, the feeling of utter helplessness. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Esther May could almost feel the shift in her son's demeanor, the subtle change in his breathing. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice low and dangerously calm. "Mama, tell me everything again. Every single detail." She did, recounting the events precisely as they had unfolded, her voice laced with a mixture of pain and anger. When she finished, there was another long silence. Then, Marcus spoke again, his voice now a low growl that sent a shiver down Esther May's spine, despite the warmth of her living room. Those people, they put their hands on you, Mama." "Yes, baby," she whispered, her heart aching. Another pause, this one heavier, filled with an unspoken intensity. When Marcus finally spoke, his words were few, but they carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. "Mama," he said, his voice resolute, "I'm coming home." Esther May didn't need any further explanation. She knew what that meant. Her son, Marcus Shadow Johnson, wasn't just her baby boy. He was a shadow in the night, a force to be reckoned with, a highly decorated operator in the elite Delta Force. And someone had just made the biggest mistake of their life by hurting his mother. Marcus hung up the phone, his hand clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles turned white. The calm, professional demeanor that had been honed through years of rigorous training vanished, replaced by a primal rage he rarely allowed to surface. His mother. They had hurt his mother. The thought sent a cold fury coursing through his veins. He was currently stationed in a quiet corner of the Middle East, on a highly classified mission that demanded precision and discretion. But none of that mattered now. His priority had shifted. Instantly, irrevocably. His mother's voice, filled with pain and fear, echoed in his ears, overriding all protocols and obligations. Within minutes, Marcus was a whirlwind of focused action. He made a terse, coded call to a trusted contact, relaying just enough information to initiate his immediate extraction. No questions were asked. His tone conveyed the gravity of the situation. He packed his necessary gear with swift, practiced movements, his mind already formulating a plan. He thought back to his childhood on Sycamore Street, the the countless hours spent in Esther May's garden, learning about life, love, and respect. He remembered her unwavering support, her gentle guidance. That had shaped him into the man he was today. The image of her lying helpless on the ground, at the mercy of those who were sworn to protect her, ignited a fire in his soul that threatened to consume him. His skills, honed in the crucible of some of the world's most dangerous environments, were now being directed towards a single purpose: justice for his mother. He possessed a unique blend of combat expertise, strategic thinking, and an intricate network of contacts cultivated over years of service. He knew how to move unseen, how to gather information without leaving a trace, and how to dismantle threats. With clinical precision, the journey back home was a blur of airports and anonymous flights. Marcus moved like a ghost, his presence barely registering with those around him. He made a few discreet inquiries through his network, piecing together fragments of information about the local police department and the officers involved in the incident. He learned their names, Kevin Miller and Brian Thompson. He delved deeper, uncovering any patterns of misconduct or abuse of power in their records. As he drew closer to his hometown, a sense of quiet anticipation settled over him. There was no room for recklessness or emotional outbursts. His approach would be calculated, methodical, and ultimately effective. He was the shadow returning to protect what was his, and those who had harmed his mother would soon learn the true meaning of fear. The storm was coming, and it was silent, swift, and deadly. Asterisk Marcus arrived in his hometown under the cloak of anonymity. He rented an inconspicuous car and drove straight to Sycamore Street, the familiar sight of his mother's house with its perfectly manicured lawn and vibrant flower beds tugged at his heart. But the peace he once associated with this place was now tainted by the ugliness of what had transpired. He found Esther May sitting on the porch swing, a light blanket draped over her legs. Her face was still bruised, and there was a visible stiffness in her movements. But her eyes lit up with relief when she saw him. "Marcus, oh, baby," she exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. She tried to stand, but Marcus gently stopped her. "Mama, just rest. I'm here now." He embraced her carefully, his heart aching at the sight of her injuries. Over the next few days, Marcus stayed by his mother's side, tending to her needs and listening patiently as she recounted the incident again and again, each time with a fresh wave of pain. He didn't press her for details, allowing her to process the trauma in her own way. But behind his calm exterior, his mind was working tirelessly, gathering information and formulating his next steps. He visited the local businesses, asking seemingly innocuous questions about the police presence in the neighborhood. He spoke to a few of the neighbors, who expressed their shock and concern about what had happened to Esther May, quietly mentioning Officer Miller's reputation for being overly aggressive. One afternoon, dressed in plain clothes, Marcus walked into the local police station. He approached the front desk and asked to speak with the supervisor regarding a complaint about police misconduct. He didn't reveal his connection to Esther May, presenting himself simply as a concerned citizen. He listened intently as the duty officer explained the department's internal affairs process, filing a formal complaint with meticulous detail, every word carefully chosen. A few days later, as he was leaving his mother's house, he noticed a familiar police cruiser patrolling the street. It was Miller and Thompson. Marcus paused by his car, watching them approach. Miller's gaze fell on him, but he didn't seem to recognize him. Miller rolled down his window. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his tone still carrying that familiar air of arrogance. Marcus walked slowly towards the cruiser, his eyes fixed on Miller. "I'm looking for the officers who assaulted an elderly woman on this street a few days ago." Miller's face hardened. "We were responding to a call. The woman was uncooperative." Uncooperative. Marcus's voice was dangerously soft. "She's a 72-year-old woman tending her garden. What threat did she pose?" Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between Marcus and Miller. "That's none of your business," Miller snapped. "Move along or you'll be obstructing justice." Marcus leaned closer to the window, his gaze piercing. "My name is Marcus Johnson. Esther May Johnson is my mother." The color drained from Miller's face. He finally recognized the quiet intensity in Marcus's eyes, a look that spoke of a lifetime spent in the shadows, operating far beyond the realm of ordinary law enforcement. A flicker of fear, for the first time, crossed his arrogant features. Thompson's eyes widened in dawning realization. They had no idea who they had messed with. The encounter outside his mother's house was brief but impactful. The bravado had drained from Officer Miller's face as he recognized the quiet menace radiating from Marcus. The name Johnson likely triggered something in the internal affairs report, a connection he hadn't made before. Marcus didn't engage in threats or shouting. He simply stated, his voice calm but firm, that he expected a full and transparent investigation into the incident and that he would be closely monitoring the process. He left them with the chilling understanding that his resources and reach extended far beyond their local jurisdiction. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the police department shifted. Marcus's formal complaint, coupled with the subtle inquiries he had made, had triggered an internal review. The body cam footage from the officer's encounter, which Thompson had reluctantly submitted, painted a damning picture of Miller's excessive force and his complete disregard for Esther May's well-being. The local news picked up the story, fueled by concerned neighbors and Marcus's discreetly provided information. The community, outraged by the treatment of a beloved elder, demanded accountability. The pressure mounted on the police department to take action. Ultimately, the consequences were swift and decisive. Officer Kevin Miller was suspended without pay and faced multiple internal investigations as well as potential criminal charges. Officer Brian Thompson, while not directly involved in the assault, faced disciplinary action for failing to intervene. Marcus ensured that his mother received the best medical care and emotional support. He stayed by her side until she felt safe and secure again. He used his knowledge and connections to connect her with legal resources to pursue further action, if she chose. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing again, the setting sun casting a warm glow on her face, Esther May looked at her son with a mixture of gratitude and concern. You didn't do anything drastic, did you, baby? Marcus smiled gently. Justice doesn't always require drastic measures, Mama. Sometimes it just requires the right kind of pressure in the right places. The incident served as a stark reminder of the potential for abuse of power and the importance of holding those in authority accountable. It highlighted the vulnerability of the elderly and the crucial role of community in demanding justice. It also showcased the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son, a bond that could move mountains and hold even the most arrogant accountable. Call to action for the YouTube audience. This story, though fictional, reflects real issues of police misconduct and the fight for justice. Share this video to raise awareness and spark conversations about accountability and respect for all members of our community, especially our elders. Subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories that explore important social themes.